So we have our final presentation for the day. So Kim Ordén, a startup entrepreneur. I guess he's ready to start the show. Yeah, he looks to be. So he's going to talk about starting a game business straight out of school and what he's learned from that. So please welcome Kim.
Oh, wait, let me test this. The microphone. Now you can hear me better. Great. Okay, thank you everybody for having me over, and great presentation, Maria, about marketing. My presentation will be a little bit more from a different angle than that. So I'm gonna be more focusing on the things I did wrong while starting a company without much experience, and what I've learned from those mistakes. So right now I will do a quick introduction. Can you see my slides? Who am I? So I've been a game developer since 5th grade. I started with Game Maker, making games about our movies actually that we did, and I was doing amateur movies for around 10 years, very hobbyist style things. Joined a band before I even learned to play the guitar. I was asked by one of the additional teachers in school that if I wanna come join the school band, and I didn't really know how to play, but then I learned in the process. So I've been trying out a lot of different things, a lot of different creative hobbies in my life. And that is also visible in what I do nowadays. So I went to study game development in Karelia University of Applied Sciences. So basically a lot of you today in the audience are also studying in Applied Sciences game development. So it was very similar. Back in then when I applied in 2011, this was actually one of the only programs in Finland that taught game development and game programming. And nowadays the situation is much better. We have a lot of schools that focus in this, which is a great thing. So I founded 5 Games 1 month after graduating. Usually people start looking for a job at this point, or take a break or something like this. But no, I was very determined directly just to finish school and instantly put up the company and start seeing what goes on with that. I've been working with multiple different studios in multiple different platforms, in multiple different genres, all the way from mobile to VR. I've been doing some idle games, mostly mobile, some VR shooters. Then I've been making some games for women at some point, and a lot of different things. And in my own studio, I focused on business development, also running the company. So I was the CEO and in charge of all the operative side of the things, production, creative vision, office entertainer as well. So I was trying to keep the mood nice at the office. And as Maria said yesterday, that you should wear a lot of hats. So I definitely, not yesterday, but in the last presentation, that you should wear a lot of hats. And I definitely did that. And for the last 2 years, I've been a freelance game developer, and now I'm focusing on pushing my programming skills even further right now. So the content of today is I'm going to list a plethora of mistakes that I have done throughout my career. Telling you a very subjective opinion how to potentially avoid these mistakes in the future. But this is more of how I would avoid these mistakes, because it's a subjective thing. So you should listen to these things, but you need to find your own solutions. So some other tips and tricks. And these topics will be relatively edgy, and I'm trying to keep this kind of casual and nice and interesting, as we are doing the last presentation of the afternoon, and you're all probably quite tired already after a long day of conferencing. So starting a company straight out of school and proudly thinking that you know something. So the situation was not that we would have been experts. Usually people start a company when they have already some years of experience in the industry and know some things. You get a good base when you go out from school, but you probably still need to learn a lot of things, and most people learn this in the first years of working. We didn't have those skills, but we still decided to start a company. So I'm gonna quote a very ancient quote here in the beginning from an ancient Greek philosopher, Socrates. I am the wisest man alive, for I know one thing, and that is that I know nothing. So being humble and admitting that you don't know much things and keep researching things is a better option usually than actually blindly jumping into something and thinking that you are going to be great at it, which was our case. So what we did was we got the game running from Unity on a device, on an Android device, and we thought that was a big part already of the process, and that we don't have much to do anymore. But that's not the case. There's actually a lot more of work that you need to do, and it's a problematic situation in that regard. So what we had done was we have been working on a game called Trippy Viking, and when we founded the company, we actually thought that we would get the game out in just two weeks after founding the company. But in the end, it took us 9 months to get this company. And that was basically because of the code base being so bad, because there's a lot of things you need to know when doing game development. There's, as Maria said, marketing, there's running the actual company, then programming, there's art, there's audio, there's a lot of different skills that you require. And we were basically okay at some of these, but missing the most. So what I think about coding, I don't know if there's a lot of programmers in the audience, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the technical side. So in a good code base, it's more of a marketing discussion. So you have different groups of people discussing with each other. If you remove one person from the conversation will still be going on. But when you make a very bad tangled code base, it's more like a spider web with a lot of flies. So when you grab out one fly from the spider web, it breaks, and then you need to fix everything. And this is a very problematic situation. And most aspiring programmers probably ends up in situations like this. So you need to be aware of those things. So when we actually got to the phase that we were supposed to publish the game on an app store, it was there was a lot of new things that we had to manage. So we had to do all the marketing art, we had to have all the screenshots, we had to have all different things available that we didn't know about before the day when we started actually publishing the game. So again, if we would have researched more what was actually required more than taking the build out from Unity, we would have had a much better job. Yeah, so then going to the next point. So yeah, so this is a very important mistake some people do. So you are the kind of head guy of the company, and you have a very strong vision and ambition for the company, and you think that everybody else is as passionate and as ambitious about what you are supposed to do. So how I got the idea to make the company was actually I was in the army and I was playing hill climb racing there, and I was thinking that, hey, this is a very cool game, but it's quite simple and maybe we can make a better game. And that was kind of the initial idea. I didn't have much, even if I had done games in the past in Game Maker, I didn't have much understanding of how to actually make a game from start to finish and publish it and stuff like this. So that was something I was missing in experience. So what we did at that point, so usually when you start to found a company, you look for people in your network. And at this point, my network was mostly people I was studying with in Joensuu in my studying degree. So I ended up finding some people in the school who turned out to be friends with me. And I sold them the idea that let's start a company directly after school and let's work during school on some side projects to kind of push it forward. I had a very ambitious drive to change the whole industry without knowing anything. I've always been kind of dreaming big. I thought our company would be something like Nintendo or something like this, because that was the companies I have been looking up to, which was very false in the beginning. I don't think dreaming big is a bad thing inherently, but also knowing the realisms of things is usually a good thing when you're running a business. Most of the other guys had some level of ambition, but most of them would have also been pleased to something more comfortable or something more easygoing in their life. And I think most people in life are looking for comfort, and they would just like to have a easy life with a steady balance and everything going fine like this. And this is not a bad virtue of a human, but it's in a company, when you're founding a company, it's probably going to have some a lot of hardships and stress and stuff like this. So you probably want to look for people who are very passionate, very driven, and want to push things forward from a bigger vision, rather than just coming to work every day, being there for 8 hours, and waiting for the salary to come once a month. So it's like these people are very good when you are in an established state of the company and you start to hire people, but in the beginning you want really people that you can rely on and that will push the things forward with you with the same driving force. So next thing, so we actually made a mobile studio with people who hated mobile games, and this is a very big mistake as well. So it's very hard to make games, and it's very hard to make any good products in any industry. And if you don't have the passion for what you're doing, it's going to be very hard to push those things to the limit that it's required to create a great product. And the thing with mobile games, it's a very competitive industry, and it's a very difficult industry. And so if you don't have the team with the right passion and right mindset and right will to create actual like free to play mobile games and really push that thing forward, it's going to be very difficult. So the people who joined my team, or who we founded the company, they were more interested in making PC games and taking those things forward, which was not a bad thing. But if you're going to make mobile games, you probably want the people who like mobile games more. We basically got into the mobile games idea because a lot of people have probably made this mistake that they think, at least back in the day, that mobile games, it's an easy market and you come here and you get some money and then you start doing your passion projects on the PC. But it's not that simple. It's not that easy to manage. We ended up failing quite miserably at that, about that thing. And then next thing, I need to speed up a bit because I have quite a lot of points here. So underestimate the workload of the last 10% in the project. So this is slightly relatable to the beginning where I said that if you make a bad code base, things will take a lot of time in the end. So usually when you're prototyping a game, where you're building the systems and doing things and everything is kind of open, still you go very fast. But then in the end, if you don't maintain your code, it's going to get tangled, and then doing something that should take 5 minutes probably takes a week, because once you break, once you add a new feature, you actually break the whole code, and then you need to fix all those bugs. Then you need to fix all those bugs, and that fixing one bug causes even more bugs. So what ended happening, so I went to conferences, I got some feedback on the game, and eventually I told these people that we need these features, we need a leaderboard feature, we need these features, and something that I thought was a small task, small thing to do, took actually 2 weeks to 1 month, because the game code base was so tangled, and we would have saved time at that point by just scrapping the whole code base and just rewriting it with a better. So this is a very important lesson, I think, with coding, that usually if you are in a position where it starts to get very cumbersome to create some new features, it's probably faster to just throw away everything and start from scratch, because the programmer who has built the game, he has the idea in his head how he can build it better now this time, because it's very against our mindset in general, but you will probably see this in your future as well when you're working on your programming projects and understand it. Yep. So in the beginning of a programmer's career, usually you're making some dirty hacks. We're all making some dirty hacks, and those will cost you lately. We call it technical debt. Once you become more seasoned, you will be pushed to do these things by schedules and timetables. And the bad thing is that for programmers in the industry, people are continuously asking for estimates. So if you need a new feature, they're going to ask you, how long will this take? How much time do you need for this? And then the conversation can go like, okay, I need 3 weeks. And then the person in charge tells you, well, we have only 1 week. And then, but I need 3 weeks. Well, you get 1 week, and then you do something bad in 1 week, and then it will eventually break, and then you have the new discussion with the person in charge, and they will ask you, well, why doesn't it work? And then you say, well, I said it takes 3 weeks. And this is quite common. So something that they say is that you should never give estimates, but it's very hard to do business and build projects without estimates. So it's I don't have really a good answer to this, but it's just about understanding, maybe somehow learning to give a little bit buffer to your estimate, so you can actually meet those goals and have a little bit more time to maintain your code. So yeah, what I think in nowadays is you should have around 50% of the time you should use for pushing the features forward, and 50% of time to maintain your code base. Okay, so next thing is trying to please everybody and losing vision. So our company, we didn't manage to get funding. I was looking for funding for around 2 years. We looked for publishers and different sources of getting funding, and it was very difficult. If you want government funding, you need some base funding for that. Usually, we applied for DigiDemo. We applied for all of kind of funding. And when you don't have funding, you need to find other means to keep people interested in the company and keep working for it, which is not the way to do business, but this can happen for many people. And you can start to please other people. So instead of holding your vision and fighting for it and pushing forward because you know this is the right way to go, you start listening to other people too much, and then you lose your just to please them. And this is not usually a good thing. But it's good to make people feel welcome and take their ideas into consideration. But losing your own vision, if you're the guy in charge of the vision, just to please others, is usually not a good call. Yes, going to the next thing because I'm running a bit out of time here. So yeah, focusing more on how to run the company than how to make a great product. So we went to a lot of events. We hanged out in the startup scene. We did networking. There was bookkeeping. There was board meetings. There was annual meetings. There was pitching. There was pitch decks. There was investor nights, and a lot of things. And these things aren't bad, but they take up a lot of time, and that time could sometimes be put on the product instead. So these things will have much more value when you already have a better product to showcase. And in the beginning we actually had, but then when that didn't become anything successful, we had to start building the other product, and then we had already these pipelines going, and it was very hard to find time. And here I think the biggest mistake was that I was in charge of running the company, fundraising, production, and also the creative vision of the game. And I think in a good situation, you wouldn't have the same person in charge of both of these things, at least on an operative level. So you would want to have the guy who's looking for funding, he can go to the conferences all he wants, but you have a very strong development team with a very strong creative vision, creating the good product that he can then sell and running on their own. So I think that could be a good approach for this issue. This is a bit of an edgy situation, but I have a point here. So basically, we didn't have a sustainable plan B, because it's very hard to find the funding if you have a company without a track record, without previously launched titles, and a team that lacks certain hard skills. So if you have a lot of programmers on your team, you can work for hire those programmers maybe to sustain the development in hard times, and you're not going to fund your game with this, but at least you can get some income. And we focus too much, we believe too much that our first game will make money, and we didn't have a good strategy to keep going without this. So it kind of failed on that idea. And then we keep like doing this CPR for the company for the rest of the time. And that's not a good thing. And you need to be realistic about what you have to offer to the investors and what you have to offer to the publishers. And you need to realize what other companies have to offer. So here is again the competitive analysis between two companies and the other things in the market. So you should know where you stand in that position. So if we look realistically now from like a third person view, what we had a bunch of guys who barely who just graduated and barely knew how to get the game on the Google Play and App Store, and pushing this game forward. We had very little understanding of production, very little understanding of programming, because and all these different things. So it wasn't a very feasible situation to look for funding. And I think when you look for funding, there is some key characteristics that they are looking for, and this is like the track record of the team and how fast you can actually get games out and have some track record to show that you can actually push your vision forward. And we didn't have that. And unfortunately, just in the middle of me looking for fundraising, even our programmer left the company, and this can happen. So then in the end, we had like a founding composer, me, who was like a creative and CEO, and then we didn't have a graphics artist on the founding team, because the guy who was supposed to be the graphics artist, he basically left also quite soon, and he wasn't very reliable, and it was very hard to find a new person to replace that role because we couldn't hire anybody. So we were in a very problematic situation. So looking at it from now is that we had basically a team trying to make some ambitious game. We lacked basically everything on the production side, and we had a couple guys who could basically do some operative stuff on the company, and but not actually make the product. So what I would do nowadays is focus in the founding process on more on people that actually can get something valuable done in regarding the product, and try to keep those guys on the team. So less of those guys who are solely focusing on some supportive task and operations task, and more of the people who can actually like bring maybe the great 3D models to the game, maybe bring the great narrative, maybe bring the great code that runs very performantly on the device. But this is my opinion again, and I'm not underestimating the effort of people, but in our situation, we basically lacked all the key parts of the team at that point. So it was more or less impossible to get any funding at that point. And then here is another thing. So not pivoting. Pivoting is when you change your strategy completely. And we started the company with the strategy that we will be constantly making our own games and constantly focusing on creating our own products. And we didn't have a plan B, and we stick to that to the bitter end. And the company kind of sank with that idea, or that the company is still up and running, but the idea of what the venture was, so to speak. And that's probably not a good thing. And pivoting in the wrong situation, like I've seen that in a lot of companies as well. So they start pivoting too late. So when the money starts running out, they go into panic mode, and then they start looking for anything that could make a quick cash. But it's already probably too late at that point. You should have already thought about the other strategies and have something, building up for those, because it takes time to build those business relations to actually create a valid product that you can sell on that market, and or a service or whatever. So just putting all the eggs into one basket was kind of a bad thing. But we were around 23 years old when we started the company. So, and there wasn't in Joensuu, there wasn't a lot of people who was telling us how to do things. So we were basically learning everything by ourselves in that regard. So, but then if you not pivoting, this is kind of related to what I just explained, is the other thing, pivoting too often. So this is like when you completely lack persistence to sticking to something. So how this looks like in practice is you have a product and you test it, but you don't really test it. You do some user acquisition, you try it on the market, and then you're like getting the initial results and they are not completely aligned with something, and you give up, and then you think you can manage, you are already out of funding, running out of time, and now you think you can suddenly make a new product in from out of thin air in like 2 months. And that's crazy as well. So what I would suggest, or what I would do now, is like give it some time, you know, to kind of mature and try it out. Like be very be testing that you are very sure that you've tested it on every single way, because it's going to take you more time to build a completely new product from scratch than having that product and maybe fine tuning it and seeing if it can work on some other platform, on some other system, for some other audience, for some B2B case, whatever. You know, you already have something done. So thinking that you can get something quickly done again is probably underestimating the situation. So here is another thing: focusing on too many things at once. So this is back to wearing too many hats, and this tends to happen in a lot of companies. So what I did was I wanted to take responsibility of the operations and stuff like this, so the other people could focus more on the creative side and creating the product, but it wasn't completely flawless strategy. But how I see this is you basically have a 150%. You can give 150% for like a short time of all your resources, and when you give it for too long, then you start running out of resources, and then you're gonna be at around 70% or 60% or even worse, 50%. And then if you split this on one task, so okay, 50% on only programming, that's still like a relatively okay thing. But if you split 50 to 80% on like 6 tasks, it's gonna be too much. So you're basically giving like 10 to 15% per task. And if you would really require that 150 in that competitive industry, it's gonna be very difficult to make it out. So it turns out, for at least for me, it was like I was kind of doing this and then doing that and then doing that, and it was like I was kind of like doing everything with my left hand instead of like really putting myself into it and focusing. So how you can manage this is try to split the responsibilities or workload a bit better between the team, or then just have you need to be very good at time management, and I unfortunately aren't that great at time management. So that is one thing how you can approach this issue. So yep, next thing. Okay, this is not, no offense to anybody who is giving advice or anything. It was more about our situation, our unique situation. So in Joensuu, where we were founding the company, there was an entrepreneurs incubator, but there wasn't really people in the game sector or in the software industry much either. So the advice we got was from people who had been more working in the forestry industry or something like this, and it's like they were very experienced in that field, but it's very not easily reliable for the games industry. But the issue is when you're a youngling or a newcomer, you can see a big title and get kind of intimidated by that. And if you see like, okay, this guy has done something in 20 years, you start to blindly believe what they are telling you. And that was probably like the biggest mistake. They didn't know much about the games industry, but it was their job to help us. So they found out some information about the games industry, and then they gave you some advice that wasn't really applicable to the practical situation that we were, or practical challenges that we were meeting at the time. So it's like it's something that you should listen to everybody, I think, but you should not blindly follow anybody because they have a big title. Like the good ideas can come basically from any level. It can come from the intern you have in your company, or from the higher ups, or from somebody who is outside of the company. But you should do your own research and evaluate that data. Don't let the titles fool you always, that this is some reliable stuff without checking it first. So but like it's like nobody can really tell you how to run your company. They might know how to run their own company and how to run their other operations, but it's very very hard. It takes a lot of work, a lot of putting time into this, and there's no like quick meals or no free lunches here. So like how I look at things is like it's most things in life is like show up persistently kind of game. So if you want to become good at something, if you want to learn a new skill, if you want to make a game, build a YouTube channel, go to the gym and grow your muscles or whatever, you just need to show up consistently all the time. It doesn't matter that much how you do it or what you're doing, but as long as you're doing it, you will, and iterating and thinking what you're doing, eventually you will find out the good ways of doing these things and you will get better at those things. And the same goes with the company. If we can't transfer experience to other people with our current technology. We can only tell what we have experienced, and that's not completely the same thing, because we as people, when we feel, when we are good at doing something when it's now happening, like now, right when it's in your face, then we start reacting at things, and that's something that you can't get from somebody telling you what to do or what they have gone through. So we still usually have to go through the same, or at least some of the mistakes by ourselves, because we won't either believe them or something like this. But yeah, then the next thing is having a mindset of, if we just get there, it will get easier. This is never true. It never gets easier. There will always be, whichever state you are in, like when you were a child, you had some problems and some hardships in your life, and when you were a teenager, you had other hardships in your life, and when you start a company in the beginning, you have some hardships, and when you go forward with it, there will be some other hardships. So it's you need to play the long game usually. So you need to maintain your resources. So if you're thinking like, okay, if I just manage this one phase, then I will be there, and then everything will get easier, you will eventually burn out. And that's where you will basically be thinking that overestimating the resources you can allocate in this current challenge right now, because you're not thinking about the long game, you're thinking about the short game. Like, hey, if I just survive this 3 months now, then I will be in the phase that, okay, now I can relax. So yeah, and so right now I would go for a strategy in my company that I could keep doing for a weekly basis for like 10 plus years, and sticking to that. Okay, next thing. So yeah, this is more of like it's not, I think Joensuu is a great place. Some people, maybe you visited the place, it's quite nice city in the summer, like every city in Finland, but there was some good like incubator systems. We got a free office and all this stuff, and there was a lot of good things. But the biggest issue is that there is no established company there. There is nobody to look up to, nobody to go for advice, like in other more established hubs. And when this isn't happening, it's you're probably gonna do the same mistakes. Like you can go see these companies in the conferences and meet people and network, but I think it gives more value if they're actively in the community and you can actively see these people, rather than like seeing them once a year or twice a year, and you can have a proper discussion for multiple hours with these people. Usually in these conferences, it's all mingling, it's all sales, and you don't have that much time. Everybody's have a very packed up schedule, so it's going to be very difficult to push that thing to a level where you can actually actively learn for these things. So that's very shortly. I would nowadays choose a place maybe where there is already an established community. Of course, when there's an established community, you need to fight for the labor with the bigger people, but that's maybe something that you can manage. So yeah, focusing more on trends than finding a niche market. So this was not really fully that we didn't like fully go for trends, but the thing is that in trends you have a lot more competition, and there is a lot more bigger players that can compete with you. But we kind of try to mix these two. So we're trying to find our own niche in the mainstream, like looking at trends, kind of please the investors, I think, but still doing it with our own twist. But then they really didn't fit well together, and we should have probably just committed to completely going for the niche market, because there is a lot of niches that are undersupplied, and if you just can find a way to reach that market, you can probably make a good money for a good business venture for a smaller audience or a smaller company. Of course, if your company is big, you need to start playing in the big markets as well. And I think this is also relevant for the hiring purpose. So a lot of people might think that, okay, learning Unity right now is a very cool idea, and learning Unity and C# because all the companies in Finland are looking for Unity developers. But most people go for the first idea, you know, they go for the obvious choice, and then you will be competing with all the others about the obvious choice. But if you go for C++ and Unreal Engine, that's also slightly mainstream. But maybe you go for pure C++ and start writing your own game engine. So suddenly in a situation where there's somebody looking for a new person for this role, there will be maybe one position, but you will be the one of the 5 people or one of the 3 people applying, while again for a Unity position there might be like 100 people or 1,000 people applying. So just something to keep in mind. Next thing, I'm starting to lose a little bit, been talking a lot constantly for 40 minutes. Need to rush through this. Thinking that we have actually a chance to get a competitive product done in shorter time than established studios. So what is this case is, I don't say it's impossible, but it's highly unlikely. There's a lot of issues in established companies that they are not as flexible, and they might be too like messed up with their own game, and they are very not easy to change their direction if they have been going one way for a long time. It needs to be in the company strategy already to be flexible from the beginning. But they have some key talent there, and they have some good people who have a lot of experience on how to do things. So just talk to people from other companies and listen to them, how long it has taken them to actually push these things forward. Like, for example, finding a publisher or making a game from start to finish, and how long is the prototyping phase, and how long is the actual production phase. So when I talk to companies, we try to make a finalized product in half a year or something like this, which is sometimes possible if you really know what you're doing. But then I heard from other companies that they might be doing prototyping and pre-production for a year before they go even to like find a publishers, etc. So just listening to other people and their experiences, and trying to like be realistic about your estimates and what you can get done in what time. So then a bit of more like personal stuff. So underestimating the needs of human beings. So we are all humans. Elon Musk might say that you can work 80 hours a week, but I don't think he's a human. He's probably an alien. Because if he does that for 30 years, it's crazy that he's still up and standing. It hasn't collapsed completely. But most people are human beings that you're going to work with, and they have needs. We need water, sleep, food, love, appreciation, meaning, and stuff like this. So make sure that you look after yourself in this situation. So how I would prioritize nowadays my work and life balance is I was doing work, and then health-ish, and then friends and family. So I was like for a couple of years just like completely ignoring, always putting work at first, and it's not very healthy way of doing things. You need to have other things in your life, I think, as on top of work. So how I would do things nowadays is first focus on my health, and then the family and friends, and then the work. You need to work hard, but some people, there's this saying that work smart, don't work hard. And the problem is when you don't know how to work things and how to do things and how to work smart, then you start usually working hard, and you start panicking and not thinking about the situation. You just try to do something to get the thing forward. So yeah, and then the last thing was the last mistake I did, which was thinking that I wasn't a human being, so I thought I was capable of anything, and that usually doesn't end up well. So and when you burn out in a company or by working, I've met a lot of CEOs and people who run their companies that have burnt out. It's not nothing to joke about, and it's very serious thing. It can end up very badly, and it can take a lot of time to get back from that to actually start working again. So if you somehow can avoid that situation, it would be very great. And the only way to avoid that situation is to care more about your health than your other things. So this is where I end my presentation. Hopefully it wasn't too cumbersome, but yeah, thank you everybody. We might have some time for a couple questions, but
yes, we sure do. So thank you very much, Kim, for your presentation. A lot of good stuff and good insights on that big list of things you just quickly ran through.
yeah,
I'm sure there's a lot of developers here that would really much like to talk to you afterwards. But hey, a couple of quick questions here. So first of all, there's lots of opinions on should you actually take some entrepreneurship courses or something like official training before you start your own business, or what's your okay, yes.
yeah, take any training don't be the rebel guy, because I was the rebel guy, and learning everything by yourself is not usually a great idea. So
okay, so do definitely take these entrepreneurship courses.
yes.
Thanks. So next question: what kind of what type of company would you actually found nowadays in, let's say, in Finland or Sweden or any of the countries that are here? I'm guessing the types of companies you can establish are pretty much the same. So
yeah, well, I've just got deeper into games myself, but I'm more interested in the creative side nowadays than the actual company side. I'm getting more and more indie the more I put time into this. So less interested in the business side and more interested in the artist side. And I've seen some business ventures, like there's a lot of cool indie games, and these people put a lot of time on these games, and they manage to create good products. I think there's still a demand for great products in that part of the market. So I'm thinking about just going there. But then I've been thinking about educational technology, not maybe educational games, but just educational technology. I have some ideas there as well. I was studying educational sciences for a while in the university, and there's a lot of things. But what I would like, you need a drive. So we kind of thought with our company, like, let's do something that is now a good idea to do and fits the market, but it's usually you're already too late by that time or too early. So you need to find something that really has a driving force in that team, and that you can keep on going and still has some kind of demand, or even better, a bigger demand. So
yeah, how do you feel about freelancing and or this kind of light entrepreneurship that's available, or should you go for a limited liability company right away?
Well, I did limited liability directly, but yeah, I wouldn't it's a good school to learn how to run a limited liability company, but apart from that, it's not very useful, and you can learn these skills much later in life as well. And now there's much more options, like ukko.fi or doing another kind of thing to do freelancing, or just through Fiverr or something like this. And what I suggest is actually focus on doing those things and starting slowly instead of just jumping into the deep end directly. Like, it will teach you something, but will be so much panic that you will probably be focusing on the completely wrong thing. So you can do it, but it's not maybe the best way of doing things.
Yeah. Sure. Well, if you're bootstrapping, you have a shoestring budget. How important do you think it is to actually kind of focus on saving costs or getting revenue in? Is there a difference between these two?
So Well, if you can save, there is this saying in Finnish that ei ne suuret tulot, vaan ne pienet menot. So if you have a big, it means like if it's not the big income, it's the small spending. And if you can manage to maintain your economical spending very low, and you can find people who are very pleased to work in such, you can get a much longer runway and much more time to work on a product with a much smaller budget. But the problem is then you can't go for like traditional fundraising routes, because there will probably be somebody thinking like, how can these guys make this product with only 30,000 euros? And there comes another problem, and it's like what they are not gonna eat at all or anything. So in that game you need to put the estimates higher, because otherwise it's like what Maria said, that having a low price isn't always a good thing. You need to sometimes put the higher price, because it also brings credibility.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
What about like the kind of initial funding? Is it like the infamous 3Fs? So, or is it something else that you would go for nowadays?
Well, now I'm looking for funding just through DigiDemo for one of my projects, and then saving up some stuff from my freelancing to maybe go for the Tempo at some point. And it's a good way to start. But if you're like in our position, we had no way of saving 30K for the Tempo or making that, or in Joensuu at that time. But if you already have some, like before you found the company, I would suggest you have at least 1 to 5 customers. It will make things much easier. We had a not a great product and no customers, so basically half of the runway was spent on trying to panically look at the time sticking and trying to do something. So try to prepare before you found the company, and try to actually have some business already before you put the company up. So have the first invoice already waiting, and have that invoice like prepare you for a little bit of time at least in the advance.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much, Kim.
Thanks.
Lovely to have you here.